Big time breaking news at UFC 274 in Phoenix. Brian Campbell, Luke Thomas of Morning Kombat here. Charles Oliveira, UFC lightweight champion, no more. Missed weight on the scales, could not make 155 pounds. Came back a second time, still 1/2 pound over. Title stripped, fight will go on though. Only Justin Gaethje on Saturday night has a chance to win it. First and foremost, Luke, considering the career arc and redemption story, tough pill to swallow for Do Bronx.
This is a disaster. We should just say what it is. It's a disaster. In part, BC, here's why it's a disaster. Because he drained himself to the point where he looked like death the first time, and even more so the second time, and still didn't make it. So now you're fully, because a lot of times people will miss and then be like, I'm not going to cut anymore because I don't want to compromise what's left. Yes. But he doesn't have that choice because he didn't want to give up the belt on the scale. He still loses the belt on the scale. He still drained himself. He's going to lose 20% of his purse. And if he loses the fight, he's going to get half of it plus Brazilian tax, plus American tax. This is, listen, a loss tomorrow would be worst case scenario. But up until that, this is a worst case scenario, or I guess maybe losing the fight altogether. Still, this is really terrible. And the point that you raised, BC, is the most important one, which is this guy missed, I think, weight 4 times at featherweight and moved up to 155 and has looked so dynamic since then. He was the champion up until a few minutes ago, for crying out loud. But we had this narrative from Justin Gaethje about, oh, he was a quitter and da-da-da-da-da. And he has been flaky at 145, missing the weight. Fights kind of
lightweight, though.
Fights kind of collapsing under him. But we thought at 155, this was all behind him. BC, it's only a half pound, but it's the biggest half pound of his life.
Okay, if he comes out and he's just as dynamic, we get to that in a second, against Justin Gaethje and wins the fight but doesn't get the title, we've seen Davison Figueiredo at flyweight. We've seen Yoel Romero miss weight in a title fight, but still win the fight and get another opportunity, right? That could put it all back on the tracks. But the scarlet letter right now, though, just hurts to see because Oliveira finally put it all together. And even I think with the most recent finishes, stopping Michael Chandler to win the vacant title, then really putting it on Dustin Poirier to make that first title defense, it just showed you that, like, not only is he as dangerous as he ever was, that was already a fact, but he was getting the critical respect. That he's not a flash in the pan. He's not a reckless risk taker necessarily. Like, he has figured out how to completely well-round his game and be the very best of himself. But to not lose it on an unforced error, there's gonna have to be a mental toll. There's probably a physical toll to try to cut weight twice, look like death, disrobe. That's another topic. But the mental toll, Luke, it's like the worst possible time. It
really
is the
worst possible time. And you really have to think now, BC, how does this affect the fight? Remember the odds when we did Morning Kombat just an hour ago or whatever it was, where he was, I think it was like plus 160 to minus 140. Or I mean, we're talking not quite a pick'em, but pretty close. Dude, what is this going to do to the betting odds? What does this do to your perception? I had picked Charlie Olives. I don't have any confidence in that pick tomorrow. Now, he has missed weight before and won fights. He's missed weight and lost, but it's not true that if he misses weight, therefore he loses. If you're Justin Gaethje, you couldn't get too calm. But if you are Justin Gaethje, you got to be licking your chops on this thing.
Here's the deal, though. Sometimes when a fighter misses weight, it ends up being a physical advantage the next day in boxing or MMA because they hit a certain point where they're like, if I go forward and try to make this, I'm going to physically damage myself too much. I need to preserve that. This doesn't feel like that case. This feels more just like a really bad mistake. And in this calendar year, fighters that have missed weight in the UFC, I believe the stat is correct, 1 in 6 the next day. So uphill battle, to say the least, in a fight that was already violent as shit on paper. You feel like anyone can win at any time.
Close.
But now to have this, the mental toll, the physical potential receipt with that, Charles Oliveira is going to have to be better than he ever has been up to this point.
Let's game
to bite down on that and get through that against someone as dangerous as Gaethje.
Totally agree. So let's game this out, BC. Let's say he wins tomorrow and does it in relatively clear fashion. What is the discussion point of him after that? It would be, okay, he's still the best lightweight, but dude, you got to tighten up that whatever's happening. That's not the end of the world per se. But dude, if he loses tomorrow and gets finished, remember, he's already drained from this horrific weight cut. Good thing it was in the morning because he'll have 32 hours or so, whatever it is, to rehydrate. So that part's better. If he loses, does he burn up all the goodwill he has built?
That's the question. I think there's a great chance of that. You wonder if he also burns up the momentum. 10-fight win streak, and within that win streak, what has made it so special? Not just the number of finishes, but like the intention within that I'm going to leave no stone unturned. I'm not going to lose by split decision in a number one contenders fight and not get my moment. He went in there and took Chandler's best punch and bounced back from being dropped and finished him.
Kevin Lee dropped weight against him. He was 158. Charles did not miss weight and beat him there.
And then against Dustin Poirier, he takes his game to a new level, mauls him on the ground in the second round, and it just shows you that there's a hunger to fight. And like, if he loses the title, it was going to come in a situation where someone took it from him, someone beat him. Now there is the potential where he could lose it, and the blame, at least personally, would have to be internally on him. You know, the blame could be, and look, that's enough if you're not mentally tough enough, and I'm not saying he isn't. To get to this point, he's showing you something special. That's why his story has been so like romantic in a way, but that's a tough pill to swallow, man, when it's on you.
Yeah.
So that's the potential thing that Oliveira's got to overcome.
See, it's one thing to be in the wrong weight class and consistently miss weight, and people will beat you up for it, but there's always this kind of thought surrounding everything. Well, it's like, okay, but right, he's in the wrong weight class. Like, we could just solve this problem if we move to the next weight class. Okay, you move to the next weight class, and I thought everything was in order, and then this comes back. And I know we can say, well, maybe he had an injury, maybe he had this, maybe he had that. Dude, he's the champ, or he was the champ. You know you have no 1 pound allowance on that scale. You know there are no corners you can be cut. You know if you don't make it, you're going to hand the title back to the organization no matter what else. It is not acceptable at this level for that to happen with these kinds of stakes.
And do fighters sometimes, have this situation where they missed and what have you? I forgot the direction I was necessarily going right there, but there's other times that it means different things, and it's not as much of a scarlet letter. This time around, everything we just laid out, it's just like, if you found it, like how many fighters end up that you find out after the fact they fought hurt in a title fight because it was their moment, too late to pull out.
Plenty.
They're like, Cain Velasquez in the first Fox main event against Junior Dos Santos. But in this case, it was like everything had come around for Oliveira where, damn, man, damn. If we find out afterwards, yes, that could change it, but you got to pull out if that's the case. If you feel like there's a question, you might not make it. If it's injury produced, then
you pull out, you still keep the fight. You go through with this and you miss weight.
Nobody wants you to pull out, but the thing is, it's happened, and that we have backup plans for that.
Or maybe he mismanaged his weight. I don't know what the issue is. Again, if it's an injury, I understand, but then you have a question you have to ask yourself. And I want to make one point too. Yes, the belt is, you can say what you want it to mean. But if you have a UFC belt, remember, we don't have 4 sanctioning bodies. There's just one for the UFC. Obviously, there's Bellator, but you know what I'm saying. The point I'm trying to make here is, yes, it's supposed to signify the best fighter in that class, at least at that moment. But it also kind of signifies, I won't say the most professional, but it signals a degree of professionalism where, like, dude, when Dustin Poirier, who's big as a house as well, goes and makes, for the weigh-ins, there's never a question about whether he's going to make it, even if he's suffering, because guys at that level are assumed to have their professionalism in order where it's not any kind of consideration. I didn't have one for Charles Oliveira at 155, and now I have to reintroduce that. Not a good look.
So technically, it is the first person to miss weight and lose their title on the scale in UFC history because of that. We've seen people miss opportunities to fight for the title, but we've also seen Nico Montano not able to make it to the scale, basically, and get stripped. But first time for this scenario, not a great
I think Travis Lutter was trying to fight for the title, but
lost that opportunity. Yeah, we've seen it here and there. Different scenario here. We'll find out how that affects things. UFC 274, Phoenix. Luke Thomas, Brian Campbell will be with you during the fights, after the fights, youtube.com/morningcombat. Enjoy. This is interesting, though.